Some people do not leave your life by walking away. They leave long before that, in small moments, in careless words, in the way they treat your peace as if it were something cheap. And the dangerous part is this. By the time you finally understand who they are, you may have already paid the price for keeping them close. Think about it. A person does not have to betray you loudly to become dangerous to your life. Sometimes they only need to stay near you while quietly pulling you away from your own clarity. So stay with me until the end, because the first signs are easy to recognize, but the later ones go deeper. They show you why so many people confuse charm with character, closeness with loyalty, and emotional noise with sincerity. And if this kind of reflection speaks to you, consider subscribing. Not because I want your attention for a moment, but because this channel is for people who are learning how to see life clearly before life teaches them painfully. Welcome back to Guiguzi Strategic Wisdom. I'm David Welbeck, the writer behind this video. Today, I want to talk about 4 signs someone is not worth keeping close. But I will tell you something before we begin. There are 4 signs you can see on the surface, and there is one hidden sign beneath them all. The hidden one is the root. The others are only branches. Because in life, the real danger is rarely the person who openly dislikes you. At least with that kind of person, your instincts stay awake. You know where you stand. You keep your distance. You protect your words. The real danger is the person who stays close enough to influence your emotions, but not honest enough to protect your peace. That is not friendship. That is not love. That is not loyalty. That is access without responsibility. And once someone has access to your inner life, they can disturb your timing, weaken your judgment, and make you act out of fear when you should have waited, or act out of anger when you should have remained silent. This is where most people get it wrong. They think keeping someone close is an act of kindness. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it is an act of poor judgment. Sometimes it is your loneliness making decisions for you. Sometimes it is your ego refusing to admit that you misread someone. Sometimes it is your desire to be understood by a person who has already shown you they only understand themselves. A wise person does not keep everyone close, not because they are cold, but because they understand the cost of proximity. The first sign someone is not worth keeping close is that they only respect you when they need something from you. There is an old strategic truth hidden in human nature. The face people show in need is not always the face they show in power. When someone needs your help, your support, your time, your forgiveness, or your influence, they may become gentle. They may become humble. They may speak with warmth. They may remember your value very clearly. But watch what happens when the need is gone. Watch the tone. Watch the patience. Watch whether they still respect your boundaries when they no longer depend on your kindness. That is where character reveals itself. It is not because they forgot who you are. It is because their respect was never rooted in who you are. It was rooted in what they could get from you. Look at reality for what it is. Some people are polite only when they are climbing. Once they feel secure, once they get the favor, the connection, the introduction, the emotional support, the money, the attention, the reassurance, they return to their natural shape. And their natural shape may not include gratitude. In friendship, you see this when someone disappears when things are going well, but returns the moment their life becomes difficult. They do not ask how you have been. They do not notice what you are carrying. They come with urgency, with pressure, with a problem that suddenly makes you important again. In work, you see it when someone flatters you before a decision, then ignores you after they get what they want. In family, you see it when someone speaks of loyalty only when they need sacrifice, but treats your needs as an inconvenience when the situation is reversed. The instinct behind this is simple. Human desire is selective. When people are driven by appetite rather than character, they see others as tools, not as souls. They do not always know they are doing it. That is what makes it difficult. They may even believe they are good people. But instinct does not need permission to reveal itself. A person who only values you when you are useful is not close to you. They are close to your benefit. Do you see the turning point here? The turning point is not when they ask for help. Everyone needs help. Mature people understand that life can humble anyone. The turning point is what they become after receiving it. Do they become more respectful or more entitled? Do they remember your kindness? Or do they behave as if your kindness was simply their right? The consequence of misjudging this kind of person is subtle at first. You begin to feel drained but guilty. You begin to feel used but confused. You tell yourself, maybe they are just going through something, and sometimes they are. But a difficult season does not give someone permission to make you their emotional servant. If you keep such a person too close, your compassion becomes a doorway. Your generosity becomes a habit they exploit. Your patience becomes the place where their selfishness sleeps comfortably. And one day, you realize you were not loved. You were convenient. That realization hurts, but it also frees you. Because once you see the difference between being valued and being used, your whole life becomes quieter. The second sign someone is not worth keeping close is that they punish you for having boundaries. A person's reaction to your boundary tells you more than their reaction to your kindness. When you say yes, almost everyone can smile. When you give, almost everyone can appear warm. When you make yourself available, flexible, forgiving, and easy to reach, many people will call you good. But the real question is not how they treat you when you comply. The real question is how they treat you when you calmly say no. That is where the mask loosens. A person guided by wisdom understands boundaries. They may not like them in the moment, but they recognize the dignity behind them. They know that every life has limits. Every mind needs rest. Every heart needs protection. Every person must guard something. Or eventually, they will have nothing left to offer. But an immature person hears your boundary as rejection. The impatient hear it as disrespect. Fake people hear it as a loss of control. So they punish you. Maybe not openly. Maybe they do not shout. Maybe they do not accuse you directly. They become cold. They withdraw affection. They make you explain yourself again and again. They use silence like a weapon. They make you feel cruel for protecting your own peace. That is not love. That is control dressed as hurt. This is where most people get it wrong. They confuse guilt with conscience. They think, I feel bad, so maybe I did something wrong. But sometimes guilt is not proof that you harmed someone. Sometimes guilt is only the echo of an old pattern where you learn to abandon yourself to keep peace with others. I once knew a person I will call Mark. We worked together years ago in a small office where everyone knew everyone's business. Mark was charming in the way socially ambitious people often are. He remembered names. He laughed easily. He made you feel like you were part of something important. At first, I liked him. Most people did. But over time, I noticed something. Whenever he needed help, he came with warmth. Whenever someone told him no, the warmth vanished. One afternoon, He asked me to stay late to help fix a problem that was mostly his responsibility. I had already made plans with family, and for once I simply said, "I can't tonight." He smiled, but the smile changed. Not much, just enough. The next day, he spoke to me as if I had betrayed him. Short answers, cold tone, little comments in front of others. Nothing dramatic enough to confront, but enough to make the air heavier. And that was when I understood something I have never forgotten. Some people do not want your kindness. They want your obedience. That moment taught me to watch the space between a person's request and my refusal. Because inside that space, the truth often appears. In friendship, this can look like someone who expects constant access to you. They want replies immediately. They want emotional availability whenever their mood shifts. They want your attention, your reassurance, your loyalty. But they do not ask whether you have the strength to give it. In marriage or family, it can look like someone turning every boundary into a personal attack. You ask for quiet, they call you distant. You ask for respect, they call you sensitive. You ask for fairness, they accuse you of changing. In work, it can look like a boss, coworker, or client who praises your commitment only when you overextend yourself. The moment you protect your time, they question your dedication. Look at the pattern. They are not upset because you did something wrong. They are upset because you stopped being easy to use. The human instinct behind this is possession. Some people confuse closeness with ownership. They believe that if they love you, need you, raised you, hired you, helped you once, or suffered near you, then they have earned unlimited access to your life. But wise people understand that closeness without respect becomes invasion. And invasion, if tolerated long enough, becomes resentment. The consequence of keeping a boundary-punishing person close is that you slowly become trained against yourself. You begin to hesitate before honoring your own limits. You begin to rehearse explanations. You begin to shrink your needs so they will not react. You call it peace, but it is not peace. It is fear with manners. And when fear becomes the manager of a relationship, love cannot breathe there. The closing insight is simple, but it is not easy. A person who loves your yes but attacks your no does not love your whole self. They love the version of you that obeys. The third sign someone is not worth keeping close is that they are addicted to appearances but careless with substance. In every age, there are people who polish the surface because the inside cannot bear inspection. They know how to seem loyal. They know how to seem spiritual, generous, wounded, ambitious, wise, misunderstood, impressive, or kind. But seeming is not being. And this is where strategy begins. Not in suspicion, but in observation. A calm mind does not ask, "What image is this person showing me?" A calm mind asks, "What pattern do they return to when no one is rewarding the image?" Think about it. Anyone can say the right thing when the room is listening. Anyone can post noble words, speak about loyalty, talk about healing, praise humility, condemn selfishness, and still be ruled by ego behind closed doors. Words are cheap when they are not required to survive pressure. The real test of substance is consistency when there is no applause. In social competition, this kind of person is common. They know how to perform goodness in public and practice calculation in private. They compliment you in front of others, then quietly compete with you when your name begins to carry weight. They celebrate you when your success is small enough not to threaten them. But when your value rises, their tone changes, not always openly. Sometimes they become concerned, Sometimes they make jokes with small blades inside them. Sometimes they speak about you with just enough doubt to poison how others see you. That is not honesty. That is envy trying to sound balanced. In family, it can look like the relative who cares deeply about how everything appears to outsiders, but refuses to deal with the pain inside the home. They want the photograph, the holiday smile, the public respectability. But when someone speaks the truth, they call it drama. They would rather protect the family image than heal the family wound. In marriage or close partnership, it can look like someone who performs devotion when others are watching, but neglects tenderness in private. They want the reputation of being loyal without the discipline of actually being present. They want credit for the role, not responsibility for the bond. This is where most people get it wrong. They mistake performance for sincerity because performance is often louder. Sincerity is quieter. It does not always know how to advertise itself. Real loyalty may not make speeches. Real love may not constantly announce itself. Real maturity may not need an audience. Fake people often understand this weakness in others. They know most people judge quickly by appearances. So they learn the language of depth without doing the work of depth. They learn the posture of kindness without the sacrifice of kindness. They learn the vocabulary of loyalty without the cost of loyalty. The psychology behind this is the hunger for status without transformation. Some people want the reward of character without the burden of character. They want to be seen as disciplined, but they do not want to govern their impulses. They want to be admired as generous, but they resent giving when it costs them. They want to be trusted, but they do not want to be transparent. That is not maturity. That is branding. And life has a way of exposing branding under pressure. Because when money is involved, when reputation is at risk, when desire is awakened, when jealousy enters the room, when someone must choose between comfort and truth, the polished surface begins to crack. Do you see the turning point here? The turning point is pressure. Never judge someone only by how they behave when everything is easy. Ease makes many people look better than they are. Watch what happens when they are not praised. Watch what happens when they are corrected. Watch what happens when someone else receives attention. Watch what happens when telling the truth costs them something. That is where substance appears. The consequence of keeping an appearance-driven person close is that you begin living inside their theater. You become part of the image they are trying to maintain. You may be expected to stay silent so they can look good. You may be asked to forgive quickly so they can feel clean. You may be pressured to ignore what you know because acknowledging it would disturb the story they are selling. And if you are not careful, you will betray your own perception just to keep peace with someone's performance. That is a costly mistake. Because the moment you deny what you see in order to protect what someone pretends to be, you lose contact with your own clarity. The closing insight is this: a person who cares more about looking good than becoming good will eventually sacrifice truth to protect an image. And if you are close to them, they may sacrifice you too. The fourth sign someone is not worth keeping close is that they bring confusion wherever clarity is needed. There is a kind of person who never meets a simple truth without wrapping it in fog. When they hurt you, they make the issue your tone. When they break trust, they ask why you are so hard to please. When they are confronted, they bring up 10 unrelated memories until the original wound disappears inside a cloud of emotion. This is not depth. This is evasion. A wise person knows that confusion is sometimes accidental, but repeated confusion is often a strategy, not always a conscious one. not always planned in a cold and deliberate way. But the instinct is still there. When someone does not want accountability, confusion becomes useful. It gives them room to escape. In the spirit of old strategic wisdom, when the path is clear, the sincere walk it. When the path is clouded again and again, someone benefits from the fog. Look at reality for what it is. Healthy people can misunderstand. They can become defensive. They can need time. They can struggle to express themselves. But when someone repeatedly turns every conversation into a maze, you have to stop asking whether you explained it well enough. The real question is not, how can I make them understand? The real question is, what do they gain by not understanding? That question will save you years. In friendship, this can look like someone who hurts you, then makes you feel guilty for bringing it up. They say, I thought we were close, as if closeness means never being held accountable. They say, I guess I'm just a terrible person, turning your pain into their performance of self-pity. Now you are comforting them for the harm they caused you. In work, it can look like someone who avoids clear agreements. They leave everything vague, then later use the vagueness to their advantage. They say, that's not what I meant, or I don't remember it that way, or you must have misunderstood. And because there was no clarity, you are left defending your memory instead of addressing the facts. In family, it can look like old patterns no one is allowed to name. Everyone feels the tension, but the person causing the tension insists nothing is wrong. And if you speak plainly, you become the problem. Not because you created the wound, but because you disturbed the silence around it. This is where human instinct becomes dangerous. People do not only seek pleasure, they seek escape. They seek emotional advantage. They seek ways to remain innocent in their own mind while still doing what benefits them. And one of the easiest ways to escape responsibility is to make the truth feel complicated. But truth is often not as complicated as people make it. Someone lied. Someone used you. Someone crossed a line. Someone said one thing and did another. Someone wanted the benefit of closeness without the burden of honesty. That is not confusion. That is character revealing itself. The consequence of keeping a confusion-making person close is mental exhaustion. You lose hours replaying conversations. You wonder whether you were too harsh, too sensitive, too suspicious, too demanding. You begin to distrust your own memory. You start needing evidence for pain your body already understood. And slowly, your inner life becomes noisy. A noisy inner life is easy to control, because when you are confused, you do not act with timing. You act from pressure. You over-explain. You chase closure. You reveal too much. You beg for clarity from the very person who benefits from withholding it. That is how people lose power in relationships. Not all at once. Little by little, through the habit of trying to make dishonest people be honest. The closing insight is this: someone who consistently makes you confused is not always more complex than you. Sometimes they are simply less honest. The fifth sign someone is not worth keeping close is that they awaken the worst version of you, then blame you for becoming restless around them. This is the hidden root beneath all the other signs, because the final measure of a person is not only what they say to you, or what they do in front of you, or how they behave when things are easy. The final measure is what happens to your spirit after repeated contact with them. Do you become clearer? Or do you become smaller? Do you become more grounded? Or do you become more reactive, anxious, suspicious, and ashamed of yourself? Think about it. There are people who enter your life and your mind becomes more disciplined. You feel calmer around them, not because they flatter you, but because they respect reality. They do not force you to perform. They do not keep you guessing. They do not make every difference feel like a threat. They may challenge you, but the challenge has dignity in it. And then there are people who disturb your center. Around them, you explain too much. You defend too much. You wait for signs. You read tones. You become strategic in a way that does not make you wiser, only more tired. You start acting in ways that do not feel like you. That is not chemistry. That is nervous system confusion. It is not because you are weak. It is because proximity shapes instinct. Human beings are not stones. We are affected by the emotional weather around us. Stay near contempt long enough, and you begin to anticipate attack. Stay near dishonesty long enough, and you begin to doubt simplicity. Stay near someone who constantly shifts blame, and you begin to carry responsibility for things that were never yours. Look at reality for what it is. Some relationships do not destroy you by force. They destroy you by adaptation. You adapt to the coldness. You adapt to the inconsistency. You adapt to the half-truths. You adapt to the little punishments. You adapt to the pressure of always managing someone else's reactions. And then one day, you look at yourself and wonder why you feel so far from your own nature. This is where most people get it wrong. They ask, is this person bad? But the real question is not whether someone is completely bad. The real question is whether keeping them close is making you betray what is good in you. Because some people are not monsters. They are wounded, immature, frightened, proud, ambitious, insecure, or lost in their own desire. They may have reasons. They may have pain. They may even have moments of real tenderness. But a reason is not a release from consequence. Pain explains behavior. It does not excuse the repeated damage of it. In everyday life, this shows up quietly. You keep answering the phone, even though you know the conversation will leave you heavy. You keep attending the gathering, even though you know you will be compared, criticized, or pulled into old roles. You keep trusting the coworker who smiles in private and distances themselves in public. You keep giving chances to the friend who is warm when lonely and careless when admired by others. You keep calling it patience. But sometimes patience is just fear wearing noble clothing. Near the end of life, or even at the end of a difficult season, people rarely regret protecting their peace too early. More often, they regret the years they spent negotiating with patterns that were obvious from the beginning. They regret the time. They regret the missed chances. They regret the work they could have done if their attention had not been trapped in emotional confusion. They regret the family moments they were too drained to enjoy. They regret losing themselves while trying to hold on to people who were never holding them with the same care. Do you see the turning point here? The turning point is when you stop judging closeness by history and start judging it by effect. Yes, you may have known someone for years. Yes, you may have shared memories. Yes, they may have helped you once. Yes, they may have a good side. But what is the effect of keeping them close now? Does your life expand, or does it contract? Does your judgment sharpen, or does it blur? Does your inner life become steady, or does it become a battlefield? Mature people understand that loyalty is not the same as self-abandonment. They know that not every connection is meant to remain intimate. Some people belong in your memory, not your daily life. Some people deserve forgiveness, but not access. Some people can be understood from a distance, but not trusted up close. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom with boundaries. And there is a quiet grief in this. I will not pretend there is not. Letting someone go, or moving them farther from your inner circle, can feel like losing a version of your own hope. You may grieve what you wanted them to be. You may grieve the future you imagined. You may grieve the part of yourself that kept waiting for the pattern to change. But grief is not always a sign that you made the wrong decision. Sometimes grief is the price of returning to yourself. A wise person learns to pay that price before the cost becomes larger. Because fate is not only shaped by the opportunities you take, it is also shaped by the people you allow near your decisions, your emotions, your timing, and your sense of worth. A person who disturbs your clarity can make you miss the right moment. A person who feeds your insecurity can make you reject the right opportunity. A person who plays with your emotions can make you act too soon, speak too much, trust too late, or stay too long. And in life, timing matters. There are doors that do not stay open forever. There are seasons when discipline is required. There are moments when your future depends on your ability to remain calm while your emotions are being provoked. If someone repeatedly pulls you away from that calm, you have to ask yourself whether closeness with them is worth the destiny it may cost you. Now let me bring this down from philosophy into lived reality. You have only so much time. You have only so much attention. You have only so much emotional strength. You have family obligations, work pressure, private fears, ambitions you do not always speak about, responsibilities that do not pause just because someone else brings chaos into your life. You may already be carrying loneliness. You may already be trying to rebuild something. You may already be learning how to trust yourself again after betrayal, disappointment, or years of misjudging people. So you cannot afford to keep close those who make your inner life unsafe. This does not mean you become suspicious of everyone. That is not wisdom. That is injury pretending to be protection. A wounded person sees danger everywhere. A wise person sees patterns clearly. There is a difference. Wisdom is not paranoia. Wisdom is disciplined observation. You watch how people behave when they need you. You watch how they respond to your no. You watch whether their substance matches their appearance. You watch whether they create clarity or confusion. And finally, you watch what happens to you when you stay close. Because your own spirit is evidence. Your peace is evidence. Your exhaustion is evidence. Your repeated anxiety around a person is not something to dismiss simply because you cannot prove every detail in court. Life is not a courtroom. Relationships are not legal contracts. Human nature often reveals itself through atmosphere before it reveals itself through facts. And those who stay clear-minded learn to respect atmosphere. So what truly reveals a fake person? Not one mistake, not one bad day, not one moment of weakness. What reveals a fake person is the repeated gap between image and reality. The repeated use of warmth when they want something and coldness when they do not get it. The repeated punishment of boundaries. The repeated performance of virtue without the discipline of character. The repeated creation of confusion when clarity would require accountability. That is what reveals them. Pattern, pressure, consequence. What should a wise person actually watch for? Watch for what people become when desire enters the room. Watch for what they do when they are not praised. Watch for how they treat those who can no longer benefit them. Watch for whether they protect truth when truth costs them something. Watch for whether they make you more yourself or less yourself. And why do so many people mistake performance for sincerity? Because performance is easier to see. Sincerity often moves quietly. Performance knows how to speak at the right volume, dress itself in the right language, and appear wounded when challenged. It knows how to look loyal, look humble, look deep, look misunderstood. But sincerity is proven over time. It is proven in restraint. It is proven in consistency. It is proven when no one is watching. It is proven when someone has the power to take advantage of you and chooses not to. That is rare. And because it is rare, you must not waste your closeness on people who only imitate it. The mature and wise person is not a saint, not perfect, not untouched by ego, desire, fear, or weakness. A wise person is simply someone who has learned what matters and what must be protected. Someone who understands that peace is not emptiness, but strength arranged in order. Someone who knows that the heart can be generous without being careless. Someone who knows what to let go of, even when letting go hurts. Someone who knows when to wait, because not every moment is meant for action. And someone who knows when to act, because not every pattern deserves more time. That is maturity. Not hardness, not bitterness, not emotional distance from life. Maturity is the ability to stay human without handing your life to those who do not know how to value it. So if someone repeatedly uses you, punishes your boundaries, worships appearances, creates confusion, and pulls you away from your own clarity, do not argue with the pattern. See it. Accept it. Respond to it with discipline. You do not need to hate them. You do not need to expose them. You do not need to win a final debate in your mind. Sometimes the most powerful move is not confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful move is quiet repositioning. Less access, fewer explanations, more distance, more self-respect. Because in the end, the people you keep close become part of the architecture of your life. They influence what you believe is normal. They shape the emotional climate in which your decisions are made. They can either strengthen your judgment or slowly corrupt your sense of reality. Choose carefully. The cost of misjudging people is not only disappointment. Sometimes it is time. Sometimes it is opportunity. Sometimes it is the quiet loss of yourself. Thank you for staying until the end. This is Guiguzi Strategic Wisdom. If you have not subscribed yet, and this reflection gave language to something you have lived through, consider joining the channel. Share this video with someone who may need it, and leave a comment about your own thoughts or experience. Your story may be the very thing another person needs to read at the right moment. Continue the journey with us. I'm David Welbeck, the writer behind these videos. I'll see you in the next one.